Where'd you get those eyes?
Em meio a diversos slashers adolescentes repletos de clichês, no início dos anos 2000, surgia um novo vilão trazendo um conceito original e uma mitologia mais elaborada, resgatando a essência dos clássicos filmes de monstros sobrenaturais. E sob a direção de Vitor Salva e produção executiva de ninguém menos que Francis Ford Coppola, em 2001, chegava aos cinemas Olhos Famintos.
O que é aquilo?
Ao voltarem para casa por uma estrada isolada, os irmãos Trish e Derry acabam atraindo a atenção de uma misteriosa criatura que se alimenta de humanos. E agora, eles precisam encontrar uma forma de escapar desse predador que os persegue incansavelmente.
Jeepers Creepers.
Apesar de ser uma história fictícia, a sequência em que o Creeper é visto escondendo corpos no porão de uma igreja e depois perseguindo os irmãos, acabou sendo associada a um crime real ocorrido nos anos 90.
Não pode ser.
Enquanto dirigiam por um longo trecho de estrada em Michigan, o casal Ray e Marie Thornton presenciou o momento em que um homem tentava esconder um lençol ensanguentado. Ao perceber que estava sendo observado, o homem partiu com sua van atrás deles. O casal relatou ter sido perseguido por vários quilômetros, até que ele finalmente desistiu. O homem foi identificado como Dennis DePool, que foi preso por ter assassinado e ocultado o corpo da própria esposa.
Bunda mole.
Bunda seca.
Repetiu bunda 2 vezes, perdeu.
Originalmente, os protagonistas formariam um casal, mas o diretor acreditava que um interesse amoroso poderia desviar a atenção do público do tema principal do filme. E ao decidir que Trish e Derry seriam irmãos, ele precisava encontrar os atores certos para estabelecer essa relação de forma convincente.
You think this is some kind of fun for me?
Just cut the fucking bullshit! Tell us what the hell you're trying to do!
I don't think I wrote her to her full potential, and Gina Phillips, who plays her, came in and she wasn't going to let me get away with any false moments. She became Trish and said, no, Trish really wouldn't do this. Wouldn't she do this and this? And she didn't make her part grow out of some kind of ego. She made her part grow because she was absolutely right. This is not a person who would stand by and watch this happen. She'd be more active in this. She'd be more assertive here. That's an example of how my own limitations as a writer are forgiven because of the talents of casting smart.
I actually asked myself 100 questions I wrote down and then wrote hundreds of pages for about a month, 6 weeks of just writing about her and thinking about her and figuring what her favorite music was and what things that are totally not in the script but just help me connect to her so that way I feel like I know who she is, I'm confident in her shoes no matter what's thrown at me. I don't have to think, oh, what would Trish do in this situation? I know what Trish would do in that situation.
It's none of your goddamn business.
Jesus,
Derry! What's this guy trying to do? Just get out of his way.
Well, he's nuts!
Get out of his way, Derry!
And now he almost runs you off the road and goes swishing past.
Shit! What the hell is his problem? My first guess?
Imbecil!
I love the fact that it's a brother-sister relationship instead of your normal, romantic relationship. It's not a love interest. And he's wonderful. Justin, I just adore him. From the second he walked in the room, I auditioned with different guys, and they had me read with a few different young men. And when Justin walked in, it was like an immediate spark. When those things were right away, we felt like brother and sister, and it just everything came off the pages, and it was wonderful.
You can't call it now.
My ass!
You have to call it when you see it. You can't.
I was in shock! Fuck! I don't remember there being so many rules to this game. Of course, when there was, you were the one making them, weren't you?
I see her as a sister now. It was very easy. She made it very easy. I think with any other actresses, I might have had a hard time. She's very honest, and so we just played off of one another.
A cada 23 primaveras, durante 23 dias, ele sai para comer.
O que tornou Olhos Famintos tão distinto de outros filmes de terror foi a construção de um vilão com uma caracterização completamente original e uma mitologia própria.
That was a part of the script at the cat lady's house, and she says that one line.
Aquele não é meu espantalho.
And I thought that was really gothic, this image of this guy standing in front of this old rotted scarecrow. That was just like the essence of how dark and ragged this character was, that he would blend into the scarecrow. Yeah, the creeper himself, the way he was described in the script, where he at first appeared like an old man in ragged clothing. And on closer inspection, you find out that there's something wrong with him. He looked like an old man at first, but there was like this eeriness about his face where you look like it's not quite right. And then, of course, the longer you looked, the more you realize there's something really different and strange and wrong with what this individual is. And it's not just that guy in an old coat. He changes and he morphs, and there's always something else going on with the creature than you know. He flies, he must be a vampire, he's got wings. And then you see him with his clothes off, he's got a reptile's body, he's got these huge leathery wings, he's like a gargoyle. We went, okay, there's gotta be one more step beyond that where you don't know what he is. That was like, I think, the biggest treat, to create a movie monster that you didn't recognize from somewhere else. That was like, oh, that's like weird and new, you know.
E a escolha do ator que interpretaria o Creeper foi uma etapa fundamental nesse processo.
When they were doing their casting, their tests, when they were interviewing different actors to do it, they actually asked me my opinions on who they were thinking on choosing, and naturally they went with Jonathan Breck. He had a lot of charisma, and I thought he had a great look.
I play a killer, basically a bad dude. You know, I've been tracking people for centuries, and I'm an enigma of sorts. You know, nobody really knows exactly what I am in the film.
Darwin would love this guy. I mean, he's just a higher up on the food chain, and he's doing what he's got to do. You know, now that you mention it, he's not such a bad guy after all.
I had a really strong feeling that this character would be really clean and bald, and that's what I wanted to show him. So I shaved my head and went in and got the part.
Jonathan Breck.
He's a very nice-looking guy, but once he took his hair away, he didn't look nice anymore. His eyes just kind of burned out at you, and he was very intimidating. And when he first came in and did the sniff test, we called it, you know, we were scared, really scared.
Pelo amor de Deus!
Para criar o visual único do Creeper, a equipe utilizou uma combinação intensa de maquiagem e muitas próteses.
Victor and Brad Parker had been working on designs, from what I understand, for about 8 months. By the time they came to us to ask us to build stuff, they already had a design for the creature pretty well locked down. They knew what they wanted, and it was our job to take it and make changes to it so that it was practical to do on a human being. The script originally said that the creature has facial wings that open up. So we were trying to design a series of wrinkles and things that we could somehow make it believable.
You know, one night that comes to mind is when I'm riding on top of the car, on the roof of the cop car, and I actually pull the cop through the roof of the car and chop his head off with my battle axe. That night was, you know, just in the full makeup. I was leaning over, squatting down, basically in a squatting position the whole time, and pouring a sweat to the point where the cameraman and everybody next to me was literally, wasn't even a drip, it was literally a...
For the Creeper, we built 5 complete suits and then about 10 masks, both stunt masks and masks that Jonathan Breck wears, as well as numerous prosthetic appliances that we use for the closer days when they're going to be shooting close-up. Victor is very shot specific. When he lines up to do something, he knows exactly what he wants to see, and thank God for that, because then we can adjust what we need to do. If we know that the creature is going to be squatting down over a victim, then we can make sure that there aren't any weird imperfections showing on the backside of the suit or up his crotch, or areas where there would be tension on the rubber and it would look strange. We'd see it stretching like a rubber suit and not looking like flesh over muscles. He already had a ponytail type hair piece in the back of the design before we were involved, so I wanted to incorporate patches of hair into like the groin, the crotch area that we could easily hide flaps. It patches up the back to hide zippers and bring some more hair onto the body and give it something interesting to look at. One case, once he finally saw Jonathan in the complete suit when we did like a dress rehearsal for him, he thought, wow, maybe we should show more of the creature in its entirety, because originally the end of the film was the only time we saw the creature as his true form, whether it be a demon or a gargoyle or whatever you want to call it. That was very late in the film. But once Victor saw the suit, he was like, I want to see more of this in the film. I don't want to keep him in his clothing.
E o ator ainda fez uma pequena aparição sem maquiagem na cena final da delegacia. Mas, por se tratar de uma criatura sobrenatural, alguns elementos não puderam ser feitos de forma prática. As asas do Creeper foram desenvolvidas com computação gráfica e inseridas gradualmente, até que os movimentos e a textura estivessem completamente integrados à imagem.
Por favor, solte o meu irmão.
Trish, não faça isso!
E no momento em que o Creeper leva Derry, os dublês foram filmados diante de uma tela verde, e esses trechos serviram como base para os efeitos digitais. A explosão da janela e o voo em direção à Lua também foram criados digitalmente, encerrando uma das cenas mais icônicas do filme. Boa parte do filme envolve perseguições de carros na estrada, influência direta de Steven Spielberg com o subestimado filme Encurralado. E a caracterização dos veículos também contribuiu bastante para a identidade visual da história.
I wanted both Trish's car and the Creeper van to have distinct on-camera personalities. Getting close to the deadline of shooting and still without a car selected for Trish and Derry, we were driving to the art department one day in Central Florida, and at a stoplight, there was this wonderful old car idling next to us with this old fellow driving it. And he had kept it up, so it was really beautiful. And I was like, that's it. What is that? What kind of car is that? And it was pure happenstance that we found the right car to be the great character that takes the kids through this roller coaster ride.
Batendo em você.
We were still in Los Angeles in production. I was driving around and I think going into work one day to do more boarding, and this old van drove by me. And it was really old, and the paint on it was all messed up. And it was like rusted, and there was like this strange work rail welded to the side of it, and there's like all decayed and strange. And I saw that and I was like, wow, that's like, you know, that's like the Creeper's truck, something this disgusting.
Originalmente, o furgão do Creeper era apenas a cabine de um caminhão antigo. A equipe de produção construiu toda a parte traseira, incluindo as portas, e aplicou uma pintura cenográfica para que parecesse enferrujado e deteriorado.
I've got plenty of room in the back there to hang all my weapons of destruction and do all my gathering of bodies.
Nas cenas de perseguição com Trish e Derry, foram utilizadas 3 câmeras presas ao caminhão do Creeper. Uma delas foi instalada no topo, criando um efeito natural de trepidação, resultado da câmera estar presa a um veículo antigo. A segunda câmera foi colocada na parte frontal, bem próxima ao chão, proporcionando um ângulo baixo que passava a sensação de que o caminhão estava prestes a colidir com o carro dos protagonistas. Já a terceira câmera ficou na lateral do caminhão, aumentando a sensação de velocidade nas cenas de ação.
Qual é o problema desse cara?
Sai da frente dele, Derry!
Em algumas cenas de perseguição, os atores não estavam dirigindo de verdade. O carro em que estavam era colocado sobre uma plataforma com rodas, que era acoplada a uma caminhonete, criando uma espécie de estúdio móvel para comportar toda a equipe técnica. E a caminhonete controlava a velocidade do carro, de acordo com o ritmo exigido pela cena.
Eles nunca morrem.
I didn't know how to drive a stick shift before this movie, I have to admit. So I went and took stick shift driving lessons before. And I went out in the student driver car. I felt like a huge dork in the student driver car, yes. And my first lesson, all I did was stall.
E o trabalho dos dublês também foi uma parte essencial nas cenas de ação do filme.
Trish's double was a young lady named Jennifer Badger. She was always up for the job, and she did a real nice job, especially with the car sequence, where we had a little tricky driving to do with this big, huge boat of a car. You know, we got to spin it around on these narrow backcountry lanes, and there's barely room to drive it down the road, much less spin it around.
Para o salto sobre o carro, os dublês usaram um sistema de suspensão nos pés. Esse sistema permitia que os movimentos fossem calculados com precisão no momento da aproximação do veículo. Na sequência em que a criatura rasteja pela parede, o dublê foi preso a um cabo para se movimentar, enquanto a atriz permanecia imóvel no final do corredor. E de forma coerente com a mitologia do Creeper, que se regenera a partir das partes que consome de suas vítimas, uma cena mostraria o vilão falando, após ter devorado a língua de um policial. Mas essa sequência acabou sendo cortada.
She don't smell too good. There he is.
Com um orçamento de 10 milhões de dólares, Olhos Famintos arrecadou cerca de 60 milhões de dólares nas bilheterias mundiais. E seu sucesso comercial ainda gerou mais 3 sequências. Mas o legado do filme foi ofuscado pela polêmica envolvendo o diretor Vítor Salva. Em 91, ele foi preso por conduta imprópria com o ator mirim Nathan Forrest, que tinha apenas 12 anos de idade durante as filmagens de Palhaço Assassino. Réu confesso, Salva foi condenado a 3 anos de prisão, dos quais cumpriu apenas 15 meses, e o jovem ator acabou abandonando a carreira no cinema. Se você gosta deste tipo de conteúdo, não esqueça de deixar seu like, se inscrever no canal e ativar as notificações. Nos vemos no próximo vídeo. Até mais!